Love. In many countries, it's a matter of the heart. In Israel, it's a matter of survival. Because here, no relationship is only private. Because here, there is no real privacy. In a country that, from the moment it was created, has lived in a state of constant conflict, external and internal, intimacy has always had a different dimension. For the generation that arrived after the Holocaust, a relationship meant rebuilding the nation. For the generation that built the kibbutzim, a relationship meant solidarity and equality, but also submission to ideals. For the generation that lived under the bombs, a relationship meant a safe harbor. And for today's generation, living in the age of smartphones, Tinder, and PTSD, a relationship means a constant struggle to preserve at least a small piece of one's own self. Israel is not a place where you date like in a TV series. It's a place where, before you say, "I love you," you have to walk through an entire maze of identity. What is your past? Who were your parents? Where did you serve? Do you have PTSD? Will your family accept you? Will the rabbi bless you? Will your marriage survive social scrutiny? Here, every relationship is put through a social scan. Every romance is a potential political act. Every act of cheating, a form of rebellion against the structure. And dating apps? Here they're not just tools to look for sex or love. They are, literally, safety valves for the soul. For those who feel trapped in their world. For those who can't tell their family the truth about themselves. For those who try for a moment to feel like someone else, without judgment, without fear. That's why cheating, even though it's called cheating, is often an inner cry for freedom. Not, "I don't love you," but, "I can't take this anymore." And why does this happen? Because Israeli society, even today despite the appearance of modernity, is one of the most fragmented and politicized societies in the Western world. Your first name speaks for you. Your last name speaks for you. Your address speaks for you. Your uniform speaks for you. Your rabbi speaks for you. And sometimes, the only way to get yourself back is to give yourself the right to be no one, even just for one evening. And that's what this episode is about. About cheating that is not cheating. About love that is not love. About relationships that are strategies of survival in a country where everything and everyone knows more about you than you'd ever want to say. It's a story about Israel, but also about every place in the world where people's pasts cast a shadow over the present. Let's begin. In many countries, cheating means an affair. In Israel, it's a signal. Not always that you don't love. Sometimes, that something doesn't match what has been imposed on you. Because in a country where everything is judged, job, origin, army service, children, religion, sometimes only in the secret motion of a swipe can you tell the truth. In Israel, Tinder, Bumble, Raya, and other apps are not just spaces to meet people, they're escape routes for those who want to check, what would happen if I were someone else? What would happen if my marriage didn't count? What would happen, Donna, if I had a choice again? Israel is an open country, and oppressively close at the same time. Everyone knows everything. Everyone sees everything. Everyone knows everyone. That's why the app is a place where no one knows your real name, no one knows your past, and for a moment, no one asks which world you belong to. For many, cheating is not about an affair. It's about freedom. Freedom from social expectations, from the ideal wife role, from being the soldier who isn't allowed to fall apart, from the mother who knows everything. It's not betrayal of a partner, it's betrayal of the construct you live in. And what if someone finds out? Sometimes cheating ends in drama. The family breaks apart. Reputation is lost. You're expelled from a closed community. But sometimes, no one finds out, and cheating becomes a medicine no one sees. This is not cheating out of boredom. This is cheating out of exhaustion, out of the feeling that the social system leaves you no room, out of the need to be, for a moment, someone who doesn't have to be explained. Cheating? Sometimes it's just a quiet act of, I'm still a human being. In a country where everything has to be justified, where every feeling needs a certificate, sometimes only cheating reminds you that the heart doesn't always know the rules. Is cheating always the breaking of trust? Or maybe Sometimes it's the only way to remind yourself you're still alive. But sometimes, cheating isn't about the other person. Sometimes it's cheating on your own soul. Because what do you do when it's not the body betraying your partner? It's the mind betraying itself. When you can no longer be who you were before you entered that tunnel, before you saw too much, before you heard too much, before you became afraid of silence. In Israel, everyone comes back from some war. Not always from one particular one, but always from something. Sometimes from the front, sometimes from family, sometimes from a childhood that smelled of air raid sirens, sometimes from a history that cannot be left outside the front door. And on the way back, they bring more than medals. They bring silence. They bring night images that won't switch off. They bring emotions that won't fit into words. They bring a body that's still alive and a soul that's already gone into hiding. And that's when a different kind of betrayal begins. Not betrayal of a partner, not betrayal of God, but betrayal of oneself. When you can no longer touch, when you can no longer look someone in the eye, when you stop being present, even though you sit at the same table, when your body is laughing and your mind is lying in a trench. It's not the body that's cheating. It's the soul that has shut down in order to survive. A betrayal that says, I can't feel anymore, because if I do, I won't make it. And that's exactly why, in many Israeli relationships, you're never just the two of you. There's a third element. Not an ex-lover, not another woman, not another man. It's what is never spoken, what comes into bed with you, what sits in the corner when you try to laugh, what hangs in the air when you're silent too long at breakfast. Because Israel is a country that keeps coming back from war. But not every fighter leaves the war at the checkpoint. Not everyone comes back alone. Many return with their ghosts. They come back on leave. They come back after service. They come back with memories. They come back with emotional baggage that cannot be diffused like a bomb. And that silence enters the relationship. Into marriages, into beds, into the lives of children. In many Israeli relationships, it's never just the two of you. There's also a scream in the middle of the night, a cold look that cannot be warmed, no touch, because the body no longer remembers the language of closeness, avoiding conversations, because any word might pull the pin on an old grenade of memories. And it's not because there is no love. It's because there is too much memory. Everyone knows someone who has lost someone. A father, a son, a brother, a comrade from the unit. Trauma in Israel is not private. It's the background. It's the air breathed by the street, the bus, the school, the synagogue. And when you fall in love also with what that person has lived through and what they cannot talk about. Post-traumatic stress disorders are common in Israel, but they're not visible. People function. They work, they laugh, and they don't touch their wives for 3 months. Because trauma doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just closes its eyes and refuses to open them again. Some relationships try to become therapy. The partner becomes the nurse. Love, care, the relationship. A way to breathe for someone who no longer knows how to breathe alone. But that has a cost, because then you are no longer equal. You become one body carrying another. And sometimes the one who carries breaks. Many carry not only their own trauma, they carry the trauma of their parents, their grandparents. History, they carry scars from wars they don't even remember. So love does not begin on a blank page. It starts on documents that were never closed. Some relationships don't survive, not because of a lack of love, but because of overload in the background. Because how do you love someone who doesn't believe the world is safe? How do you build a future with someone who still lives in, there might be no tomorrow? Love in Israel often doesn't start with, I love you. It starts with, I'm still here. And if you're lucky, that person will stay. But often, love loses to what was, not to what is. Because how do you love when your heart is still sitting in a trench? How do you trust when your mind is still counting losses? How do you open up to another person when you yourself are a minefield? Or maybe it's precisely where there's so much destruction that the love which stays is more real than anywhere else. And maybe that's exactly why so many people here look for breath elsewhere. Because betrayal of the soul doesn't always shut the heart. Sometimes it opens a need to feel, just for a moment, that you are someone else. Someone without baggage. Someone whom history hasn't touched yet. And that's when temptation appears. A new body, a new language, a new story. Because in a country where a relationship often resembles a minefield, love with someone outside your world gives the illusion that you can still love without fear. And then, a different kind of relationship begins. A holiday fling is nothing new. But in Israel it has a different dimension. Because here, it's not just the body. It's identity. It's escape. It's often an attempt to find a world where you are not the victim, not the soldier, not the son of the fallen, not the daughter of survivors. Young Jews from France, Canada, the US, or Argentina come on programs like Taglit, Trips, Hebrew Lessons, Showcase Army, the story about returning to the land of the ancestors, and then dates. Because for them, the Israeli is a symbol of safety, intensity, a real Jew. The relationship becomes proof that you've returned to the source, that at last, you are no longer just a Jew of the diaspora. You are part of a nation that fights and loves on its own land. But for Israelis themselves, these relationships are often an escape from family pressure, from the question, why aren't you married yet? From the uniform that defines you, from a rabbi who won't accept your true orientation. With someone from outside, you can for a moment be whoever you want. Not the rabbi's son, not the one from that unit, not the mother who buried her brother, not the woman carrying the family trauma on her back. You're a guy from the beach, a girl from Tel Aviv, someone who doesn't have to explain why the sound of a siren still shows up in your dreams. And that's why this kind of relationship is sometimes a cure, and sometimes a form of betrayal of your own world that keeps you from losing your mind. There are also more calculated cases, marriage with an Israeli as a path to status, a relationship as legalization of presence, a child as a reason to stay. It's not conspiracy, it's everyday life. In a society where every piece of paper is a pass, where citizenship provides protection, where a last name can change your life. And what then? Many such relationships don't survive, because when the novelty wears off, what's left are differences, languages, expectations, and things you can't fix with Google Translate. But some do survive, because in that chemistry there's also something authentic. A desire to be with someone who sees you fresh, without history, who doesn't know your father, who doesn't ask where you served, who doesn't remember your name from wartime. Sex in Israel is not only physical, it's symbolic too. With an Arab, it's an act of crossing the border. With a foreign woman, it's a way of escaping the cultural box. With an Israeli, it's a return to the original code. No one says it out loud. But here, the body speaks more than words, because with words, you can lie. In bed, you have to take off at least some of your masks. In a country built by immigrants, sex and relationships are not just relationships. They are also declarations of which world you want to belong to the community, to the West, to Tel Aviv, to a religious ghetto, to a circle without a past. And sometimes, one body becomes the place where conflict, longing, and the future sleep under one blanket. Because here, every relationship, even a one-night stand, is an act of escape, return, or an attempt to rebuild yourself from the rubble. Is a relationship always love? Or maybe, sometimes it's a ticket into the world where you want to wake up, even if you don't know anyone there yet. And sometimes, a relationship is neither an act of rebellion, nor a romantic dream, nor an attempt to escape. It's simply calculation. Because in a country where tomorrow is never certain and life costs more than it should, love doesn't always come first. Sometimes survival does. For the last 15 minutes, we've been trying to answer one question. How do you love in Israel? The answer? with caution, with intensity, with memory, and with your respiratory system on emergency mode. Israel doesn't teach you to love slowly. It teaches you to love despite trauma, despite the army, despite a mother who does not accept, despite a rabbi who won't bless, despite an app that filters identity, despite the fear sitting by your bed at night. Love here is a function of survival. If it doesn't work, the system starts to crack. If it works, it gives hope that tomorrow is even worth planning. Because in Israel, you don't just love a person, you love their history, pain, origin, political choice, social status, scars you don't see at first glance. And you have to live with all of that, or retreat. For some, a relationship is a project. For others, a rebellion. For yet others, a duty, a ritual, an act of courage. But no one is indifferent to it. Because here, nothing is just about feelings. Love is always an equation. You plus society plus memory plus God, or his absence, plus risk plus history that you cannot erase. Israel is a country without privacy. Here everyone knows everyone. Here every question comes back like a boomerang. Here every relationship is potentially public, long before it becomes intimate, and that's why people either shut down or speed up. What's left? Relationships that don't look like the ones in books. Relationships with a dose of anxiety. Relationships with the shadow of the rabbinate, a phone call from mom, a border in your phone. Relationships that don't ask, is this love? But, can we get through this together? Love in Israel is not a luxury, not an ideal. It's an attempt to endure closeness in a place that gives it almost no space. But maybe that's exactly why it's so strong. Because those who have it had to fight for it. Can love in a country of tension ever be truly free? Or maybe only where you have to fight for a feeling does it have any real value? In Israel, people love fast. Not because they're impatient, but because here, something can always happen that will separate you. Not tomorrow, not next year. Today. That's why no one wastes time. That's why they say, I love you, as if it were the last word they'll get to say. And maybe now you understand why one small app, one swipe of a finger, can in Israel be an act more meaningful than many political manifestos. Why cheating is not always cheating. Why an affair is sometimes just a quiet scream of a soul suffocating in a system it cannot change. Because Israel is a beautiful country, strong, proud, but also full of trauma, pressure, silence. Here you love with the weight of your father's back, the father who never came back from war. Here you cheat not because someone is not enough, but because you no longer know how to be yourself. Here a relationship is sometimes an economic project, sometimes a social pass, sometimes the last lifeline, and sometimes the only space where you're still allowed to be human. And yet beneath all of this, everyone here, like everywhere, just wants to be loved. And one thing is worth remembering. When on the news you hear about a modern liberal Israel, about a high-tech society, about a startup nation, remember, underneath there is also a nation in continuous therapy, a nation that hasn't yet had time to make peace with its past and is already building its future, a nation in which love is a luxury, and sometimes the only hope. Because in a country where everything trembles, where every word can remain unspoken, where every look can carry a story bigger than life, love is a form of resistance against emptiness. And that matters. So, if you want to better understand Israel, the Middle East, the world of people living under pressure, under trauma, under constant tension, stay with us. Subscribe to this channel. Leave a like if this episode made you think. Write a comment. What do you think about love and cheating in a country like Israel? It's through stories like these that we get to know the world, not from newspapers, not from politics, but from people's lives. And in the next episode, we'll tell you again about something you won't find in a history textbook. See you.